thank you all for joining in, people who have come for this webinar. My name is Geeta, and I'm part of SeasonWatch. SeasonWatch is a citizen science program which runs across the country, across India. And we collect information on how trees change with the seasons. And anyone interested in trees can participate in contributing scientific information about trees. And we are thrilled to host this webinar series called Tea Time with Trees. But today we are doing a delightful diversion from trees with our speaker today, Ovee Thorat.
Not yet.
She's not a doctor yet. She has just submitted her doctoral thesis at A3 in Bangalore. And her research was on the interaction between people and grasslands in Botany in the state of Gujarat. Yeah, and the more thrilling thing is that she has also authored a bilingual book on identifying the different grass species that are found in Botany. In her spare time, she likes to play her ukulele, she writes poems, and she takes stunning photos of people and landscapes. Yeah, and we are really, really thrilled to have her speaking for Tea Time with Trees webinar. Over to Ovee without much delay.
Thanks, Geeta and Swati. And hi, everyone. I hope you're doing good. I'm really excited today to share a group of plants that I have been excited for a while now. And I hope I am able to provide something for all the different age groups that join these webinars. And I had attended the last couple of them. They were really good. I enjoyed it. So it feels even better to be here on the other side and get to talk more. So there are 3 loose sections to today's session. In the first section, I'll be focusing on grasses and more of the common grasses that are around us that we use on a daily basis. The second section focuses on grasslands as a landscape and also some of the animals and humans who are dependent on these landscapes. The third section focuses on some of the challenges and issues that we have around grassland conservation. And I'll be ending with a small poem, which is a fun poem. I hope you find it interesting. So that's the plan. I'll start with the present. I'm going to switch off my video for now, and I'll be back on towards the end of the presentation. So the title of the session is Grasslands Getting to the Roots, and the title was actually suggested by a friend of mine who's really good with words, and he said if the session is on grasslands, there has to be the word grassroots in it, because you know we really need to get closer to the ground in different ways. We need to get closer to the ground to understand grasslands better. And so that's what we'll be trying to do today. And so I've observed that during last few sessions that the participants are asked about trees and plants around their houses. So I have a new question for you today in this session. And let's see if you can answer that. Can you list out names or names of products from grasses that you have in and around your house? And you can use the chat box to enter your answers. I'll have a pause of a few seconds and see if people can list down a few grass-derived products or grasses in and around their house. Yes, bamboo. A lot of people writing about bamboo, cane furniture. Okay. Korean grass. Okay. Jadu. That's a nice answer. Bamboo, broom. Oh, Digitaria. Amazing. Someone who's identifying grasses to the genus level. Lemongrass. Amazing. I also have a couple of lemongrasses around. Chatai. Amazing. Nice. Arukampul. I'm not sure about that. Sugar. Yes. So we finally have the answer that I was also going to start with. sugar. So sugar is one of the most common products derived, not one of the most common, maybe the common product derived from a grass, and sugar comes from sugarcane. It's a grass from the genus Saccharum, and it's the world's largest crop by weight. This grass, like many other plants, stores sucrose in form of energy in its structure, and it's not just used by us, that sucrose, but also by other animals like bees and other insects. And I'm sure many of you would agree that sugar has changed our lives. It's a very powerful ingredient, it's very addictive, but it wasn't always that, right? We haven't been, so even if you go back a couple of generations, if you talk to your grandparents or great grandparents, they would say that the sugar was not as much part of the diet that how it is right now. And sugar has a very interesting history behind it. And if any of you are into reading about this history of sugar, how sugar was made into a commodity or a product that became part of a market produced in huge quantities, and how it became part of capitalism, and how it has become a part of our lives. And there are a couple of interesting books. There is a lot of material, but one of the books, Sweetness and Power, is really good, by Sydney Mintz, and this is what I had read during our environmental history course at A3. So do check this book out. And there is another book called Sugar, Bittersweet History by Elizabeth Abbott. So yes, sugar is derived from a grass. Can you see another grass here in this picture? Many of you answered bamboo, right? So this is that bamboo, and bamboo is it's the world's largest grass. Most of the grasses are pretty tiny, small, but this one grows very big and also very fast. So some of the species of bamboos can actually grow a few inches in a day, and so it's a very interesting, amazing kind of a grass species. It makes excellent construction material. It's light and it's also strong. So it's perfect to make into things. It's also used to make paper. And again, paper is something that we use very commonly every day. We draw on it, we write on it, we fold it into origami. So most of it comes from the grasses. And there are 73 different genera of bamboos, a lot of species, and with a lot of varieties. And apart from construction, they are also used to make into utensils. They're also used to cook food in. So in Andhra, I have had this bamboo rice, which is amazing. They also make bamboo chicken, which is good. It's also used in Northeast a lot to cook food in, or to keep food in. A very important grass for us. And this one, rice. Actually, it's not rice, it's biryani. And I've been missing this in the lockdown. So rice has been an important grain to us. So no intention to make you hungry, but I just wanted to show how important grasses as plants are. So rice is the most important source of dietary supply, another important crop apart from sugarcane. And this is how the rice plant looks. You might have seen lush fields in many parts of India, like Kerala or coastal Maharashtra, even in the hills of the north. And there are various traditional varieties of rice also. Apart from this, there are many other grains and food products that we derive from grasses, like the wheat, from which we make rotis. It comes from grass genus Triticum. And who doesn't like popcorn? Like, for some people, movies do not happen without popcorn. And corn, that popcorn comes from a grass called Zea mays. Apart from that, there are also other important ways in which grasses are used. There is lawn grass to play sports on, and some of us worship with grasses, and also uh, there are other products derived like beverages, one of which has become very famous because the name matches with the virus that is around us right now. But yeah, that's how culturally and economically important these grasses are. So these grasses are closely connected to our daily lives, and they have been around us for millions of years. So till now, scientists were estimating that grasses evolved around 50-55 million years ago. But recently in Myanmar, there was a fossil of grass found, which dates back up to 100 million years ago. And it was preserved in amber. And if you can see over here, it has this black structure on the top, which is a fungus that is growing on it. And this fungus is hallucinogenic. So a very interesting combination of fungus and grass. And around the same time, there were dinosaurs too. So especially this one particular dinosaur called sauropod, and these dinosaurs fed on grasses. Now, I don't know what the dinosaurs will be hallucinating about, but it makes an interesting imagination to think about what kind of effect of eating this grass would be on these dinosaurs. But the point is that the grasses have been around us for millions of years, and one of the oldest beings around us. So one use that I have missed in the introduction is that grass is used as fodder by livestock as well as other animals that graze on it. Grasses belong to this family of Poaceae, and the etymology of this is such that the word is derived from a ancient Greek word called poa, which means fodder. And you can see excited me holding one of the animals that loves to feed on grasses and shrubs and other plants that grow in grasslands. So not just goats, but also sheep and horses, cattle, buffalo, all of these different animals need grasslands to graze on. And also people who depend on this livelihood. So especially all over India, there are different groups who specialize in pastoralism, who travel from one grassland to the other so that the livestock can be fed and the milk and wool and meat is supplied to the market. So this is one of the most crucial uses of grasslands. So getting to a bit of botany. Now, I don't want to introduce jargon, but if you look at botanically what are grasses, they're a group of monocotyledonous flowering plants. And here is an illustration where on the top it's dicot and on below is a monocot with the corn as an example. So as you can see, this is also an image of a dicot. Monocots have one cotyledon. Cotyledon you can also call it as a seed leaf, which grows out of the soil. And as you can see, dicots, the shoot of the dicots rises out of the soil and becomes into a sapling. It's a little bit bent like this, but grasses just straight sprout up because they have this protective sheath covering the shoot. And there are other differences between monocots and dicots which make them structurally different, like the leaf veins, the kind of roots, and the vascular structure that they have. And because of that, many of the monocots are very columnar. For example, palms are also monocots. And if you want to know more about this, please note down this site. It has really good illustrations and good information on the difference between monocots and dicots and what are grasses. Here is an illustration of how grasses look. This is done by Ashish Nedlekar, a close friend and colleague of mine. As you can see here on the top is inflorescence. The stalk that holds the inflorescence is rachis. Then there are nodes here. You don't have to get into the details of it, but grasses are structurally pretty simple. And the flowers that are there in the inflorescence, so this is a spike, and within that there would be a spikelet, and each flower is often very small, a few millimeters of size. So you need either a hand lens or a microscope to look at the flower of a grass closely. And this is an illustration of the flower. If you look at it, there are three main parts of it. This part that holds the flower is called as glume. There is a lower glume and an upper glume. Then there is pallia and lemma. And these parts are used to identify grasses often. So you really need to look at the flower to identify grasses. And many grasses also have these awns, which are used. You might have seen grasses getting stuck in clothes or sheep's wool, and that often happens because of the awns. So awns are these structures that help grasses disperse or also germinate in ground. So here are some images of inflorescence of grasses, and very beautiful to look at. The one on the left, this one, it's a species called chloris, and in Botany, a grassland in Kutch where I worked in, it's called as sial pooch, which means tail of a jackal, because it's so fluffy and soft and it looks like a tail of a jackal. Then here you have echinocloa. Again, this plant was used by people to make rotis and other like porridge and other food products. And this little grass that I like very much, it's looks very beautiful, Dactylothenium syndicum. And then there is this one called tetrapogon, and it's very easy to remember because it looks like a fish bone. So these are the awns around it, and these are the spikelets. Yeah, so this is a spikelet, and you have glooms around here. Don't get into detail so much, but look here on the right. You can see different glooms of different species of grasses, and they are very beautiful to look at. They have ornamentation on them, like some of them have waves on the side, some of them have feathery things, some of them have some intricate design on them. And that's why the glooms become very important to identify different species of grasses, and they are also very beautiful to look at. So when you're using a hand lens or a microscope, and when you come across such beautiful parts of the grasses, it feels like you're finding a treasure where, you know, something that you couldn't see earlier. So in that way, grasses are very exciting. Okay, so from grass, let's go to grasslands, or the landscape where grasses are found abundantly. And so it's, yeah, grasslands are a place where, apart from our croplands, you can see a lot of grasses. They cover almost 40% to 50% of land cover in the world. And there are different kind of grassland habitat types all over the world. Now, do any of you know what are some of these types? Can you use the chat to write down if you know different grassland types around the world? They're called by different names. I will wait for around 10 seconds. Yes, prairie, savanna, steppe, velds. Nice. Pampas, yes. Nice. So, yeah, these are the different types of grasslands. North Americas have the prairies, and the South has the pampas, savanna in the Africa, and then steppe in Mongolia, Siberia. Also, grasslands in Australia are called savannas. So these are all the types. Here is one famous type, savanna grasslands. Now, again, I'm going to ask you, to those who know of savanna or those who have heard of savanna, to close your eyes and for 10 seconds, imagine what a savanna is like. The African grasslands where the safaris happen, right? Just close your eyes for a few seconds and imagine how it is like. Did you get an image similar to this? So often we think of savannas as these African rangelands where you see zebras, lions, giraffes walking across a huge open landscape. But do you know, similar landscapes are also there in India. For example, this is where I work in Kutch, which again looks a lot like savanna, which is a mix of trees and grasses. So if you look at this image, you can see some of the acacia trees in the background, some prosopis, and a lot of grasses. So there are around 40 species of grasses in this grassland. Then we also have the Tarai region, which is good for grasses. We can see a lot of animals like herds of elephants. This image is from Maharashtra. So many parts of central India have dry deciduous areas, which also have a lot of grasses. This one is very close to my father's native place around Pune. This image again is from a border between Karnataka and Maharashtra, not very far from Bangalore. And we also have Shola grasslands in the south, famous for the Nilgiri Thar, another beautiful habitat. This image is from Rajasthan in Ranthambore. So even in pockets of dry deciduous forests, we have patches of beautiful grasslands. Yes, and Andhra, Tamil Nadu also have really nice patches of grasslands. And you can see this chinkara over here. So since we are getting into animals and birds and habitats, let me show you some of them. Does anyone know which bird this is? This is a critically endangered bird called sociable lapwing. Again, a species that is found in grasslands, and there is a lot of work that has gone into it that shows that these birds actually prefer grazed grasslands where livestock or other animals graze frequently. So they like short grasses. This image is from my field site. Then this is a hoopoe lark. This is the largest species of larks that we have in India, and a beautiful bird to look at, again from Kutch. This is a wild ass, again like known to be from the rand habitat, which is also in the background. You can see some prosopis and grasses. This particular individual was a bit sick, and it was hanging around with a group of buffaloes that the Maldharis were keeping. This is a monitor lizard, and you can see a very resilient grass in the background with salt crystals on it, and it's called as Urochondra. So both grasses as well as these reptiles can live in very harsh, very saline conditions. And that's something that also makes these grasses very attractive, that they can live in very harsh conditions. This is a gerbil, again, an animal that feeds on grasses and grass seeds, a very beautiful little animal to look at. Harriers are known to roost in grasslands. Andhra, Kutch, all these places are known for harriers. This is a Montague's harrier. Desert fox. Foxes like open areas like grasslands, and again, like an animal that is so beautiful to look at, has a lot of folklore, folk stories around it. This, I don't know if someone can guess what it is. I'll wait for a few seconds. These balls with the holes. Yes, this is a dung beetle case. So this is where the dung beetle had laid eggs in, and the beetles have come out from. This was huge. Like, this was the first time that I saw them during field work. So there are a lot of insects also who depend on the dung and the soil which is there in the grasslands. So a lot of interesting interactions between herbivores, their dung, the insects, the soil, and the rain. Another bird that is known from dry areas, sand grouse, with beautiful intricate patterns on the body. And this is the red sand boa, another common species found in the drylands. This lizard, is called as the spiny tail lizard, and it feeds on grasses. It used to be around the place that I was living in while I was doing my field work, and we used to look at it from the kitchen window, eating the grasses growing around our house. It used to be really entertaining. Is there a major lag in my images and the speech? Okay, great. This is another lizard, a lacertid actually, to which, very recently people have been studying these animals. So there are still some species that need to be known more about in these dry areas and grasslands. And this is the famous Great Indian bustard. Right, only a few individuals of these birds remain now, and they have faced issues like loss of habitat, hunting, deaths due to power lines. This is also an image close to my field site. So all of the images before this were taken in a few kilometer radius of the field site that I work in. So you can see the amazing diversity that exists in grasslands. So conservation of these birds has been very difficult, and as you can see, rather than the protected areas that are made for them, they like to be nearer to croplands and farmlands and short grasslands. Apart from the bustard, there are also other birds like the beautiful cranes. This is an image of common cranes, and they come in thousands in Kutch and in Gujarat and Rajasthan, migratory birds. Very beautiful to look at. The sound also very beautiful. And yeah, you can only see them in grasslands and wetlands around that area. So even with all of these important uses and livelihoods dependent on these grasslands, and animals and birds and insects and reptiles that are dependent on these grasslands, many of these landscapes are still categorized as wastelands. Isn't it amazing? Like, basically they are considered as non-arable land that is not suitable for agriculture or timber like forests are. And it's a colonial term that still exists, that the government still uses. And those who want to read more about the history of this term, how it was used, and the implications of use of this term wastelands to describe drylands and grasslands, there is a really nice article by Judy Whitehead in the Economic and Political Weekly. Do check it out. It's a really nice article that will introduce you to how this term came about, and how by terming these grasslands as, or drylands as wastelands, even the livelihoods and the people who are dependent on these areas also get categorized or dispossessed or marginalized in the process. If I can also send you the links to these books and articles later on in the chat. So because of this perception of drylands or grasslands as wastelands, there are a number of projects that take place which are related to some of the serious challenges that we have with conservation of grasslands. For example, there are many places that get converted into industrial areas, or then plantations happen. All these images are from colleagues from A3, friends and colleagues, and some of mine. Or they are converted into solar farms or wind farms, or as you may know, in Karnataka, also converted into campuses around Bangalore, or they are made fenced off, because grazing and pastoralism also gets considered as backward or unwanted. Often people are cut off from grasslands for protection. So this is also a challenge that grasslands and the landscape of grassland faces. And lastly, invasive species like the Prosopis juliflora, which spreads very easily across drylands. Tamil Nadu has a lot of Prosopis, even Gujarat and Rajasthan. And it's very interesting how the history of this plant too, and how it has now become a part of lives of many people living in these landscapes, where they derive firewood and charcoal from these trees. But these are some of the main challenges so far that grasslands have received, which come from the perception of grasslands as wastelands open for activities to make them into more productive areas. To me, I like grasslands because they have this immense variability and resilience. For example, this image on the right is how a place in Gujarat looks in dry season, in summer, or in droughts. And droughts are part of the landscape. Every few years you have a drought. But when it rains, the same landscape gets converted into this lush green field of grasses and sedges. So grasslands have this ability to flourish with only one shower of rain. And that's what is really amazing about them. So someone who sees this image might say that it's a wasteland, it looks like a desert or whatever, but it also is this when it rains. So grasslands fluctuate a lot with, especially dry arid grasslands fluctuate a lot with rainfall and soil. So to me, they are these moving, flowing habitats, which are really interesting with really amazing ecology. And as you might know, there is a lot of research going on in forests, but not so much in grasslands. And some of the new interesting directions that are taken in relation to ecology of grasslands are studies that now talk about this concept of old growth savanna. So just like old growth forests, you have old growth grasslands, which if converted to other land types can take years, even hundreds of years to restore back or regenerate back to what it was earlier. So now that people are getting into these things, very interesting kind of ecological research is going on. But yes, a lot more has to be done. There is so much of scope to understand the ecology of this very variable kind of an ecosystem, and not just the ecology, the relationship of also land use, the fluctuating land use, rainfall, and the ecology of grasslands. Also, increasingly now there is a focus on co-management of grasslands. So now there is an understanding that we do need local knowledge and local institutions to manage grasslands better, rather than the state deciding if it's a wasteland or not. And rather than one authoritative group taking over the management, now there is an understanding that it's nice to have like a multi-level co-management approach where the local knowledge is also used in management of these grasslands. So these are some of the papers and articles that you can look into. Okay, so we are almost out of time. Getting to the roots of this, I feel like we really need to understand why grasslands are neglected, or why so far we haven't paid enough attention. And I can share something personal that happened. I got into my PhD thesis topic, which is politics of grassland conservation, because initially I wanted to work on wolves, because wolves are these amazing animals that had captured my imagination. And I approached a few people in the institute where I was, and I told them that I want to work on wolves and grasslands. And I was asked why I want to work on this place. And I said, because I feel it's neglected, because I feel wolves are neglected. And then I got asked other questions like, what do you mean by neglected? And from that question, I went into how grasslands are perceived, how drylands are perceived, and how we need to focus more on the management, the history and the present of management of grasslands more to conserve them better. So to do a better job of knowing, understanding, and conserving this kind of a landscape, we really need to get to the grassroots level, talk to the people, understand the animals and birds and other species that are in these habitats, and really challenge the perceptions that are around the people and the ecosystem that has been there for so many years. You might have also heard recently there was a plan to introduce African cheetahs into grasslands, and one of the main reasons given for that was that it might encourage grassland conservation. But I want to ask, why do we really need to replace bustard with cheetah, or do we really need a mascot? So if do we really need like a majestic creature to conserve a grassland? And does that actually translate to conservation on ground? And then the conservation is for what, for whom? And there are these questions that we need to answer. I think what we should be doing is focusing more on the present interactions, the interesting ecology that is still not explored much, and pastoralism, which is a way by which grasslands are used a lot. So yeah, these are some of the questions that we all can answer as people who are interested in landscapes around us. Okay, so I also thought I would, for those who are interested in identifying grass species and going around looking at grasses, trying to understand what their names, botanical names are, there is some material out there, and these two books I found really useful. So apart from the floras that are present for each state or region, there are also specialized books. And Shivaji University in Kolhapur does a really good job of also conducting some courses for people who are interested in grass identification and taxonomy. So there is this book. This is very useful book. It's called Know Your Grass Genera Through Hand Lens. Anyone can identify grasses to the genus level if they have this book and one hand lens. And this is another really good book, hand illustrated grasses of Maharashtra. And there will be a lot of common species also in other parts like central India, south as well as the north. So you can also start using these books to identify grasses. There is also some online material. This is a book that me and a couple of my colleagues, Ashish and Dr. Pankaj Joshi, wrote recently. It's a bilingual book in Gujarati and English, because we wanted the local, the students and the local community to be able to use this book. And although this is a lot of botanical information, it also holds information that was provided to us by the local community about what these grasses are called in that region, how they were used, and how they are used currently. So it has some plates and images of paths, and we also have this simple key. But the thing is that we had to make this because we had to learn everything from scratch. I did not receive the training of identifying plants. And when I started my field work, I was left with very little resources to actually help me conduct my study on ecology of the grassland. So we started documenting species, we started documenting differences, and maintaining a herbarium, which we wanted to convert into digital format. And that's how this book came about. And I'm sure if you are good at photography and a bit of writing, you can even put together easily a herbarium and a book for your own region, even if it is like the city that you are in or the campus you are in. And for those who are into research and want to explore options, there are a number of places. For example, in Botany, we have this research center, which is a joint effort by NCDS and Sahajivan, a local organization, A3, and a couple of other organizations, where researchers interested in grasslands can volunteer or take up projects and stay there and be in the grasslands for a while. I wish there were more places like these because we really need them. I wish there was one more in Maharashtra, Rajasthan. We definitely need. And yeah, there are other groups as well. NCF has been quite active in the high altitude grasslands. So if you're a young researcher and you want to get to know or actively take part in research, look out for these spaces and do take part in the research that happens there. Okay, so I'm at the end of my talk, and I'm going to end this with a poem that I had written because I was so smitten by drylands. It's called Bare Dry, and I'm going to read it out. Bare, dry places with a tinge of gold and a lot of heat, places so open there is nothing to read, decluttered of life, with a lot of space to breathe. They make evenings count. When the sun goes down, I can almost drown in the soothing nights, fill up on lost electrolytes. I had glucon-D. Bare, dry places, they have nothing to hide. They are all right, don't you think so? They are open and wide for the wind to flow, making thoughts dead slow. Bare, dry places, they burn my skin, but seldom my mind. So yeah, this is the reason why I prefer to be in drylands over forests. And I hope some of you also find this relatable and interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ovee, for that extremely comprehensive understanding of grasses and grasslands, ranging from how to ID them all the way to their conservation. And that was a wonderful talk. We have time for 2 questions. Can you answer a couple of questions for us?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so yeah, can we visit that really cool grass you spoke about, which had the salt encrustation on that, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Firstly, what is the name of the grass? And
it's called Eurochondra seculosa. I will write in the chat. You can look it up.
Yes, please.
It's beautiful. It's found in very saline habitats of the Run of Kutch, and I'm sure maybe like other parts which are highly saline. So this is often you see only this kind of grass where salt water from the ocean and the fresh water from rivers and rains meet, and there are these runs with a lot of salt incrustation on them.
Lovely. And there was another really nice question. Do you know of any recent grass relatives of the grass that you spoke about, the one from 100 million years ago?
No, for that I'll have to look it up. Interestingly, people have focused more on the fungus that was found on the grass than the species, but yeah, not that I know of. I will have to find it out.
That's cool. And there was another query about exotic species. You briefly touched on Prosopis. It's a shrubby, it's a small tree species, which is now found in something that is not used to having trees in it. So
Right.
Can you comment a little bit about that? So it's a woody species in a grassland.
Yeah, so this has been a common problem, not just in India, but also in parts of Africa where Prosopis has taken over large areas of grasslands. And again, not a lot of work done on shrub invasion, but we know for sure that it leads to changes in soil and water salinity as well, and the composition of grasses around these trees. So yeah, it does have effect on how the landscape itself changes.
Right.
And like, for example, talking from my own field site, it has taken over more than 50% of the grassland in the last few decades. It was introduced. So it's also interesting how it was introduced. In 1960s, there was aerial seeding of Prosopis done because it was thought that it would make the landscape more green, it would stop salinification of soil. So again, this idea that dry places or grasslands are wastelands and they need some kind of trees or timber on them was at the root of this introduction of Prosopis in my field site.
Really interesting. There's one question. Sorry, I missed it. Anyway, the question was, are all grasses annuals or are there perennial
there are
grasses?
also perennial grasses. So the paper about old growth savannas, they involve a lot of studies on perennial grasses. So even in Botany, there are a few perennial grasses in Kutch, and there are some annual grasses as well.
Nice. There was a very your kind of question here. Since you have studied the politics of grasslands, I'm missing that again. Yeah, any comments on GIB sanctuary in Solapur and Ahmednagar, sorry.
I don't know. I think we have to understand how we are trying to protect the species and why we are trying to protect the species. Also, there was recently news that there has been, like we have been successful in producing chicks from eggs and all of that. So I don't know we definitely seem to be taking steps to make these sanctuaries into workable protected areas. But I feel like we really need to look at all the land uses that are around these places and how to maintain those with this conservation idea that we have.
Nice. Another quick question. Someone was asking, are there any online resources for identification of grasses or any other type of free online resource, I guess?
There are some of the botanical garden websites, or there are things like the plant list you can go on to search for a grass species and match the description with the sample that you have in hand or whatever you have documented. There is also KEW. I can share these links in the chat box too. There are a couple of places online that you can use.
Okay, cool. Actually, can you share the link with SeasonWatch, and we can sort of
yes, I'll do that.
Attach it as a description to the archive of this video.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and someone had asked for links to the wasteland article.
Yes, I will share that with you too,
it.
and maybe you can share them with the participants.
We can have one last question, no? So this last comment, do you believe reintroduction and protection of native species is important for grassland conservation?
Yeah, so I do feel that now it's important to look at the vegetation that we have and try to maintain it. I don't know how much faith I have in reintroduction. When it comes to grasses, as I said, they're very resilient, and they also hold this ability to sprout back. So according to me, what would be best is leaving the area so that it restores the vegetation. But again, how far back in time do we want to go, and why do we need those species? That needs to be taken into consideration.
Right.
There's one last question actually before we close. What can citizens living close to grassland region and far away from grassland regions can do for conserving the grassland habitat?
There are so many things that can be done. If you're living close, it's amazing. You can actually visit the grassland and see the different interactions of abiotic factors, like record how it changes with rainfall, seasonally, what are the changes in the species, who are the people and animals and birds that are dependent. Even documentation, talking about it, or sharing this information is like a very good step in conserving grasslands. If you're living far away from grassland region, I would say maybe you can have a trip, at least one grassland you should travel to and see how it feels to be in that place. And also, like, look at the grasses around you. They are everywhere. Like, even if you live in an urban space, in your garden, in the cricket ground that you have, so get to know them better, look at the flowers and try to understand how grasses are. That itself is enough.
I think someone also asked if you have a blog that they can follow. If you write.
I do have a WordPress blog, but it mainly contains poems and a couple of articles. I can share the link with you. And you can see that.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you so much, Ovee. That was such a wonderful talk and a wonderful discussion. And I would like to tell the participants, if you have questions, you can send them in at this email address, sw@seasonwatch.in, which I'm typing right now, sorry. Yeah. So you can send in the questions at this email ID, and we'll make sure that Ovee gets them and she answers them whenever she gets the time. Yeah, and it's time to close this meeting. Thanks once again for everyone who joined. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.